Hey, we're live. Well, welcome to the first Superversive SF live hangout. And on this one, I thought we'd have a chat about the Hugo Awards, the Sad Puppies initiative, and whatever else comes to mind. So, would everyone like to start off by introducing yourself? Let's go left to right, assuming everyone's avatars are in the same order they are on my screen. Ben, would you like to go first?
All right, I'm on the far right on my screen.
Oh, okay, there we go. They're not the same. Fantastic.
Why don't you call us by name and we'll introduce ourselves?
That's fine. Ben, go first.
Hi, Ben.
All right, I'm Ben Zvitsky. I'm here in the Czech Republic right now, and my only paid commission so far has been in the Sci-Fi Journal for Beyond the Mist. I hope people are enjoying that. I have a little poetry collection out, but that's not as successful. So that's me.
Hi.
Okay. Really? That's there we go. I'm glad I could be your first paid sale. That's exciting. Brian.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'm Brian Niemeyer, and Sci-Fi Journal is my second paid sale. Well, it's essentially more than the first one, so thank you, Jason. And yeah, I've been working on the beginnings of a space opera horror series for a while now, and I can announce here that the cover art for the first volume, which was edited by Mrs. Wright, actually, is due to be released to me today, and the novel itself should be out sometime this summer.
Cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
It was Space Pirates. It was exciting.
David.
My son in the background is interested.
Good morning. I'm David Hallquist. I'm currently here in Maryland in the United States. My first officially published and remunerated award pieces have been with the Most Excellent Sci-Fi Journal. This is a great publication that's helped a lot of people get started, apparently, and it's a mission that I'm wholly supportive of. I've got a few small pieces sitting on publisher desks and short fiction journals elsewhere, and at the moment have just completed the first novel for what will hopefully be a successful fantasy epic, and I'm looking to see what the next step with that is.
Excellent.
Okay. EJ. Now, I know I'm not the first person to buy a story of yours.
No, I started in the late 80s and around 88 when I was forced out of law enforcement by someone's bad choice of targets, and tried to really push hard then, and did well enough to get my SFWA membership, and another long story, which won't go into here now, of actually selling a couple of novels without actually ever getting them published because of creative and legal conflicts, and also made sales to magazines that started out small and grew bigger, like stuff that eventually came Aboriginal and one to fantasy and science fiction way back in the 70s, in the 80s. And then I was out of it for 20 years, and I got back into it in late 2014, and and then just I've done okay this year. I think I've got a half dozen paid sales between like November last year and right now. So I'm trying to get back into it.
Welcome back.
Excuse me? Oh, thank you so much.
Back.
Yeah, it was a weird thing. You know, I was stuck in so much different stuff, and I did write a few other things. We were involved in some other stuff, and so I was writing some search and seizure stuff and but wasn't doing anything really creative. And it feels really good to be writing again. It really does. I needed it.
We're glad to have you back.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, I enjoy your stuff. John, and again, I'm clearly not the first person to buy anything from you.
Yes, my first sale was to Sci-Fi Journal. It was a piece called The Ideal Machine. I threw together in less than an hour. It was really bad, but the dim-witted editor just bought it right away.
Oh, come on.
That's a horrible thing to say.
No, sorry. That was
but I
my.
read it ahead of time.
Sorry, yes, I did make a sale before that. I think my first sale was to Aborigine magazine, the same as EJ. It was called Farthest Man from Earth. No, my name is John Wright. I'm a failed lawyer who's tried to write some science fiction stories. I've got 10 or 12 books published now with Tor books and another 5 or 6, I've lost count, with Castalia House, which is a small 3-man publishing operation in Finland where they're hiding from the police. And I've my latest my cover art for Some Wither, my latest book. I just saw an advanced copy of it from my editor, and I wish I could swap my icon out and show it to you all because it's a beautiful piece of work. My latest book out is Architect of Eons, which comes out from Tor Books this
about 3 weeks.
month. Yeah, this month. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Nice.
I was kidding about the
Right.
sci-fi journal editor guy. I actually really admire what you're doing. Because it's long overdue. It's long overdue. There's just not that much philosophy in science fiction.
Yeah, it's unique right now.
Yeah.
Well, now if we can just find more people to buy it, I'll be set. That's the only problem at the moment. Josh.
I'm Josh Young. I can't talk. I sold a story to the Sci-Fi Journal. It was my second paid story. I wrote Domo in the first issue, and then I believe I have a story coming up in the next one, God Eaters.
You do. Kat's
I do.
illustrating it at the moment.
Awesome.
Apparently she's doing something with like a face cut in half with a skull on one side. She described it, and I'm the model for that.
Which half?
With the face. We shall see how it comes out, but anyway. Continue, Josh. Sorry.
And my Domo in Sci-Fi Journal 1 brought me to Castalia House's attention. So I have a novel coming out from them hopefully later this year, if I don't blow my deadline. Buddha's Dream of Enlightened Sheep.
Clever.
They assure me that I'm not going to get sued by Philip K. Dick's estate. I've got my fingers crossed.
You can't be sued for a title.
Oh, good.
Just make
There you
sure
go.
the
Lawyer
hidden
spoken.
robot head doesn't come after you. No one's found that yet.
And Judgy, Mrs. Wright.
Hi there, folks. Well, I have one of my things I absolutely love about sci-fi is not only seeing the excellent story qualities, but seeing all these people who I've known online for years get published in it. It's like, I don't know, it's just one of the coolest things. I have written a series of Shakespeare meets Dante, which is Prospero from The Tempest and his children. It's kind of a modern, humorous mystery sci-fi story where they go to hell to rescue their dad. And I'm currently working on books of Unexpected Enlightenment, which is a superversive YA fantasy that has been described as Fringe meets Narnia at Hogwarts. I didn't write short stories.
There you go.
You should also mention your last name, wife, because you don't write under your maiden. You don't write under your maiden name.
I write
You
under
your maiden name.
Lamplighter
Yeah,
is in fact my maiden name, and it was such a cool name I decided to keep it for writing. But I'm
That's why
Mrs.
her-
Wright around home.
That's why her icon is a
lamplighter
lamp
there.
being lit.
Yeah. And, I didn't write, you were talking about short stories to novels. They told us you're supposed to write short stories to novels, and I read a few short stories back when I first started, and none of them were even worth reading, even by me. But now, all of a sudden, I seem to be able to produce something that resembles a short story. So I'm not sure it necessarily goes short stories to novel. It may go the other way.
It may go the other way. It may go the other way these days because in the old days the market was different and there was a plentiful magazine market for short stories, and to get a novel published was a little difficult, especially after the Second World War when there were paper shortages. And with the electronic world, that's entirely different. It's entirely on its head.
Good point.
Okay. And I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Jason, the host of, or the editor of Sci-Fi Journal and the host of the Sci-Fi Show and what else? And I set up SuperversiveSF.com. Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
And you have your podcast.
Yes, the Sci-Fi Show, which will be back soon, particularly after it got nominated for something, which we can talk about in 5 hours. So
You might be skirting the rules there a little bit.
No,
I think
I
I'm
believe you're
so
allowed to.
he's okay, but
You're
if
allowed to
yesterday
drop.
everything would be different.
I believe you're allowed to drop elephantine hints as long as you just don't come out and say it.
Well, I already spilled the beans when I didn't actually read the email that they sent me properly, and then I had to run back and delete it all.
Yeah, they really should
didn't
put
even-
that in large words along the top,
Yeah, that should definitely be in the on the top of the email they send you. This is the secret, by the way.
It's a secret. Yeah, don't tell anyone.
Or Michael Williamson, who got lambasted for telling, and he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. I wrote and apologized. What else can I do? Poor guy.
Yeah, I don't think they mind. I have a sneaking suspicion. In general, the Hugos are a really poorly kept secret. That may not be true. Anyway, so the Hugo announcement. So the first thing on the slate to talk about is the Hugo announcements that are coming out today. It's been an interesting week with Brad Torgerson, who's apparently asleep now and is unable to join us, unfortunately, but he would have liked to. Brad running Sad Puppies 3 this year, and Larry running it the 2 years before that and kicking it off for the first time as an effort to try to, shake things up with the Hugo Awards because they seem to be just getting given out to a very small clique of writers. I noticed, Jaji, you wrote a post on it yesterday.
Yeah.
Recently.
As I said in my post, as a child, I spent a lot of time reading the Academy Award books because I worked for my dad's company, Distributed Movies, and I have for years bemoaned what happened to the Academy Awards, where they used to be vibrant, active movies like Gone with the Wind and It's Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, and it didn't win, but it got nominated, Wizard of Oz. And it's really hard to imagine that those movies would get Oscars these days, because Oscar movies now tend to be really literary kind of movies. And what I see happening with the Hugos is it looks like the same thing happened. It went from the kind of the rousing books that we all really enjoyed to often the books that win it are ones that a relatively small number of people find value. And then almost never, with the Oscars at least, they're almost never bad movies, but often they're not movies that have values that I really enjoy. They're not broad popular values usually, and that's what looks to me like has kind of happened with the Hugos too.
Yeah. Return of the King is the last movie like that I can think of winning, and that was 12 years ago.
Yeah, well, even if you look before Return of the King, it was like an anomaly because I think this started in the 90s. I had been worried about it for some years before that came along. Return of the King winning was like a big surprise, but it just kind of pushed everybody over.
Yeah, the surest way to not get a Best Picture award is to make a sci-fi movie. So,
well, William M. Briggs came up with a predictive model to tell who's going to win the Best Picture, and he's had quite a bit of success. And one of the key metrics is it's got to be a film that made so many billions of dollars less than the highest grossing film that year, but not much less.
How predictive is that model?
He's at like 70%, I think.
jeez.
Yeah.
I know. I remember reading about. It just reminded me of it. There's an investment house whose business model is they do investments when Congress isn't in session. because nobody's passing any laws and screwing the economy up, and apparently they do quite well. It seems like another one of the... Anyway. Okay. I think, yeah, you're probably right, Judgy, about why the quality of the awards has been changing. Although, I don't know, is there anything to... Do you think there's anything to the idea that there's something of a quiet conspiracy in the background nominating the people they want nominated?
I think there is something to that idea myself, because if you look at the pattern of wins, it's all Tor authors. Now, as a Tor author myself, I don't mind.
We can't really
pattern,
complain about that.
but we can complain.
But you're not winning.
Well,
I don't think
that just shows the good taste of the voters. We can complain, however, if it is a small group of people who are being selected for a political bias or viewpoint, and if the people who are being excluded because of their politics or because they're white males, for example. That's what's exasperating. And whether you're conservative or liberal, not all liberals are people who have it out to, stick it to white Christians. But this small clique seems to think that's their main point, their main thrust. So that's something more than, I would say it's something more than just that the literary mavens who like modernistic, stylistic works are nominating such works. Because I don't think Red Shirts by John Scalzi was famed for its literary qualities. He just happened to be a member of the inner circle.
I don't think Red Shirts won because it was a leftist book. I think Red Shirts won because of Star Trek nostalgia, which is a popular idea. And it might be that he had help because he had somebody in a position to share it among the fans who were Worldcon going fans. But I don't think, some of the books recently that people have complained that have very strong messages of a certain sort. I don't think Red Shirts won for that reason. I think it won because people were amused by it and because people had... Works often win because people really like the guy's last book. So often people will pick up a book and they'll go, or a movie, they'll go, this isn't that great, and they'll go, well, Lord of the Rings 3 was not the best Lord of the Rings, but it came after 1 and 2,
So he won for Red Shirts because Old Man's War was not bad.
That is probably part of it, and part of it was that, fans like when people give a nod to the fans, and a little Star Trek nod to the fans, I'm sure really amused a lot of people.
Well, you made a good
I like
case
Red
for
Shirts.
all these books as a gateway drug to sci-fi. I think you made a good case.
Yeah. Well, that was what my friend said, was that that Old Man War was just a great book to introduce people because he put across the very thing that makes an advanced science fiction reader not really care for it, which was that it was derivative of other works, makes it a great introduction for someone who's never read those other works.
Now, let me also ask, though, has anyone here read Joe Walton's Among Others? It won for 2012. Nope. It was up against George R. R. Martin's Dance of Dragons and China Melville's Embassy Town. I mean, it was up against. It's the pattern of things like that.
Well, but is that a matter of a secret conspiracy, or is it that the people who go to Worldcon are a core group of people who've been going to Worldcon for 50 years? The same group tends to go, and Joe Walton's been a writer for like 50 years, and they know her name. They may know her better than George R. R. Martin, even if the general public. And the reason I like Sad Puppies is my feeling is what it needs is a wider group of people becoming aware of the voting process and being able to buy the supporting memberships. And I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it's something that just happened because of changing dynamics, but that doesn't mean we can't unhappen it by inviting in more fans to become involved in the process.
I will say the thing that pushed me over the edge and made me a conspiracy theorist in this particular case was the behavior after, I believe it was last year's Nebulas came out, and it was all women writers, which I just would normally assume that was because it just so happened that women happened to have written the best stories that year and won the award accordingly. But instead, online and in their conversations, the clique all rejoiced and exalted that they had won a great success for the cause of left-wing social justice and had shut out the oppressive, racist white males. And,
The
and it
nebulas.
was their behavior that led me to believe there was a conspiracy there, and many of the same names crop up in the Hugos also.
True, but the nebulas are supposed to be the opposite of the Hugos. The nebulas are supposed to be
Like the Oscars?
small group of professionals who belong to the Science Fiction Writers of America who are putting across their opinion, and the nebulas have always been a bit more kind of literary in which books they pick. And the Hugo is supposed to be the broad public appeal.
But both come across as the problem with the tiny number, percentage-wise, of voters. When you have, basically, in the nebulas, you've got 1/1000th of 1% of the total science fiction readers in the world, and you've got just about double that with the Hugos, and that's such a minute portion that it can change readily, whether it's in... There's just not, in the SFWA, there's just, strangely enough, as important it is, there doesn't appear to be the interest on this last vote with the changing it to self-publishing. Less than 30% of the people voted.
I can tell you, when John was a member, before his famous letter withdrawing from SIFWA, he's a writer. He doesn't have a lot of reading time, so often he just never voted for the nebulas because he'd spent that same time during the year getting his own books out. He hadn't had time to read the things that came out that year. So I suspect one of the problems is they're asking a group of professionals who are usually overworked. Most writers are like John. They have 2 jobs. You write during the day, and he comes home. He stays up till 2 in the morning writing. So where is he? So these are the guys who are being asked to vote. It's hard. It's easy for a clique to get in charge because all they have to do is be active about voting.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. I wasn't knocking people who didn't vote. Otherwise,
right.
I'd have to knock myself first. I voted very little.
But what I'm saying is I think one of the ideas of Sad Puppies is to try to wake up the fans and say, hey, maybe it would be a good thing if you guys got out and voted so the books you love got a little bit of notice from the rest of the field.
Yeah, even with the Hugos, it's still 1/2 of 100th of 1% of all science fiction readers are voting.
I'd like also to make another bit of evidence for the idea that there's a clique behind it with a political agenda, which is that Ancillary Justice by Anne Leike won in 2014 against Charles Strauss's Neptune's Brood, Larry Correa's Warbound, and Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. Now, I've never read this book and I have no opinion about it, but I do have an opinion about the commentary that people have sent me about this book. And the commentary all says that the selling point of the book was the fact that she did not use the masculine pronoun in the story. One of the characters is unable to distinguish between the sexes and calls everyone she. Now, the story may be very engaging for all of the reasons, but that's the only thing anyone's talked about it in public as to what the selling point is.
Honestly, that might be a more interesting selling point if John was not trying to talk his Chinese daughter into using he and she.
Yeah. I myself do not blame the use of the masculine pronoun for sexism or for women's liberation one way or the other, because I believe the Romans also had a gender-neutral pronoun, and I don't believe they're famous for equality in the female sex. In any case, if you go to the website on Wiki, the Wikipedia website, you'll notice that the winning and the nominated stories are all linked, except for Larry Correa's Warbound. It's the only one they don't link to. No, excuse me, I'm kidding. There's others like Robert Sawyer's Factoring Humanity, which doesn't have a link also, so never mind that. In any case, if someone is winning over Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, and it's a book that is famous for having one particular selling point, and that selling point is basically a political one, a feminist one. Once again, my reaction would be very different if someone said to me, "This book is fascinating because it deals with this idea of artificial intelligence rebelling against itself," which is one of the selling points also of the book. Which I would be much more impressed with if I hadn't done the same thing 10 years earlier in the Golden Age. my book on artificial intelligence.
Hey, Jason, just to say, a friend of mine wants to know how to watch this. Is there a link for watching it?
if you come over to, if you go over to SuperversiveSF.com, on the front page, there should be able to, there should just be an embedded YouTube link, and just hit play.
I'll see if I can find it. Go ahead, gentlemen. Sorry.
But just on the front page of the website. Hang on, I'll dig the link out while people are talking.
But yeah, that's a
I'll
good
mute
point.
myself.
Did get
Okay, I
the
think
point.
I see it here.
So this is my thing with ancillary justice. I did read it, and you know it was sold as a sort of a kick-ass space opera, and like it's not. It feels like someone took like one plot thread from a Peter F. Hamilton book and just made that into a standalone thing. And there's nothing like really original in there, except for that was the first time I'd seen like the gender neutral pronouns and whatever. So that makes me suspicious. You know, the fact that you have this really very straightforward book that has nothing that's really all that creative in it, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's great." I'm like, not really.
Didn't Curious Tipper do a book like that once too? I remember an earlier book that had the gender neutral.
I will remind you of an earlier book. It was written in 1920. It was called A Voyage to Arcturus by David Lindsay. And in that book, the main character Maskel comes across a creature, Lehalfe, who is human, but is neither male nor female, but it's a third positive sex, not a hermaphrodite, not a eunuch, but another sex that we don't have on Earth. Okay, called a Phaean. And the Phaean
but I remember a book that
the Phaean pronoun is A spelled A-E. So he would just he just in the narration, not in the dialogue, said ear face was squarish and crystalline and so on and so forth. So this idea is 95 years old. It is not an original idea.
Or if you take the Chinese language, I think it's a little older than that.
My first encounter was Niven's Puppeteers, the trisexual structure.
Oh, yeah.
So how do we get to the point from where looks like Dune and Lord of Light were winning and were also bestsellers to now?
I think the pressure was even stronger with the short, as was mentioned before we started to go live here, is that short stories have become exceptionally important. And when a flash fiction story is so, I'm talking about If You Were a Dinosaur, my dear, that has only the broadest connection to science fiction because they mention dinosaurs, and is a flash fiction piece on top of it, which I think is great, personally, but the flash fiction part. But it's just a political statement, and that's all it is. It's not even a story.
It's not even a story.
I'm going to blame.
It's not bad, by the way. I don't trash the way other people have.
No, it's good writing.
It's good writing. In terms of winning, it won an award for a science fiction story, and it's not. There's no element of science to it, and there's no element of story to it. It's a prose poem, basically.
To answer your question, I blame Star Wars because the answer is science fiction and fantasy are now popular. We used to be in a ghetto. It used to be unpopular, and therefore all the fans kind of knew each other and could join together. Now it's so popular that it's mainstream to a large degree. I was in the grocery store this morning, and a guy's wearing a Pikachu shirt, and I was looking at it and I was thinking, okay, that's basically science fiction fantasy too, even though it's for kids. My kids went through about 15 years of Pikachu fans.
When has science fiction fantasy not been for kids? I mean, no offense, gentlemen.
and my point is that, and the girl we had to pass on the way to the store yesterday was wearing a Batman shirt. And these ideas that used to be a small group have become so big.
Yeah, especially comics.
It's hard to reach them.
Yeah.
So the question is how to reach the larger group of fans to get them involved so that we can have a vote on a award that will be an award that when people will see it on a book, they'll go, hey, that might be a book I want to read.
The answer, I think, lies with quality. Consider how the fans flocked still to the movies that are coming out with the Avengers and
Guardians of the
with
Galaxy.
Marvel, but yeah, look what Marvel's main comics are doing with the Avengers now, and no one's buying.
Great point.
Yeah.
Every time I heard about an Avengers movie, I thought it was the British version.
Yeah.
They did that.
They did.
Yeah, it didn't work either.
They had Uma Thurman as an appeal and Ralph Fiennes as Steed. And the bad guy was Sean Connery.
Yeah, that was I love that part of it. I thought he was great. And the teddy bears. Anyway.
So,
Oh,
yeah, the
By the way,
Hugos
we
are
will
stuck
not
in the broom
explain. We will
closet
not
of the house
explain to
that
the
Lucas built.
listeners the comment about the teddy bears. We're just going to move on.
From the movie. Go ahead, Brian.
No, so I suppose we could sum up by saying the problem is the Hugos are stuck. They've locked themselves in the broom closet of the house that Lucas built.
I will
Well put.
respectfully disagree with the Star Wars theory. My theory is that there's a since I'm a paranoid conspiracy theory nut, I believe there is a widespread movement, not just in science fiction but in the cultural in general, which has decided that the Western civilization has made a turn for the worse at about the time of the Industrial Revolution, and this widespread feeling is a cult. It's a religion. It has a political arm to it, which is some of the extreme leftist arm. It's politics, but its general approach and attitude is that the Industrial Revolution was bad, the white male is bad, Christianity is bad. We're destroying the planet. We're mean to all black people and all people of color, as they're now called, because to call them colored people is racist. And
I don't get that. It changes every 5 years.
No,
I think it's more than that.
It finally spilled over into science fiction because enough people had been raised with this in their schools and in their popular entertainment in other fields.
Yeah,
I think that Hollywood is fairly firmly on the side of the left. But CNN is fairly firmly on the side of the left. And
we used to be glad that science fiction had been immune from the things that it was in the 20s that it hit regular literary fiction, 1920s.
yeah.
And it's only very recently hit science fiction, and there's that's why I think we have a chance to fight back.
And it produces, by its very nature, produces an inferior quality of art because it's based on untruth. In order to make a good story, you need to have something that reflects the human condition as it actually is. And this utopian type thinking is based on everyone agreeing to an untruth and based on everyone agreeing to mug anyone in the group who disagrees with the consensus. It's all establishment. It's all conformist in its approach. Well, the conformist fiction in the mainstream literary fiction tends to be no plot, filled with despair, filled with angst, filled with self-loathing, and no heroes and no victories, because those things, heroics, victories, and high self-esteem, are alien to the worldview of this particular movement or cult. And I can't really call it a cult because it's not deliberately organized from some central point. It's a philosophy. It's a philosophy that's been let loose on the world about the turn of the last century.
The culture of death.
It's culture of death, right?
Yeah.
It's an excellent way to put it. You should write to the Pope and have him use that phrase. No, I'm glad he said it. I didn't see who said that, but that's
me.
Thank
Hey,
you.
we have a question from a bystander. Hold on just a
All
second.
right.
Is this one of our children who's questioning us? Or is it-
Yes, Father, it is.
okay.
Guys, hello there. I'm Orville Wright.
Hello.
Hello. Here's my question. How can there be no heroes in these stories if they see themselves as heroes?
That's a very good
When
question.
they're fighting for that stuff.
They see that. My answer would be they see themselves as heroes for revealing to mankind the awful, terrible, and startling truth that there is no God, no purpose in life, and that you are just an animal. You're just a meat robot. You're just a collection of molecules. And they think that revealing that amazing idea, which dates from Lucretius in the 1st century AD, is so new and so startling that they themselves are heroic. But you can't tell a story about meat robots.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
Harlan Ellison could do it as a short story, but I can't do that story and make the guy heroic.
They might have protagonists in those stories, but they don't have heroes according to the strict definition.
They have
Yeah.
sufferers. They have sufferers.
Because one of the ideas is the idea that heroism is bad, that superheroes, that standing out. I keep thinking of the Vonnegut story where the guy is the dancer is tied
Bergson.
down so he can't dance any better than anyone else. I mean, that's kind of how I think they see the world.
The name of the story is Harrison Bergson, And they take
that
the
one.
Vonnegut story as a model rather than as a warning.
Oh yes.
And Orwell.
Oh.
And
I
Orwell.
was thinking the same thing. I saw that posted somewhere once. 1984, guys, it was a warning, not an instruction manual.
I don't know why I'm laughing.
Honestly,
I know that's just like horrifying, isn't it? Because
Because in 1984 it wasn't voluntary. These guys are volunteering to have their language and their thoughts controlled by a set of ideas that are the culture of death.
but there is a book where it's voluntary. If you read We the Living by Ayn Rand, where she describes what happened in Russia when it fell apart, it was all people volunteering because they were being pressured because they dare not admit that they were not so altruistic that they would not go and do the extra mile even if it killed them.
Did you read
And you
Sarah
can see where
Hoyt's
she got her
physical
philosophy from if you see what happened when Russia fell apart. They
Did
went
you
mad
read-
in a very similar way.
Did you read Sarah Hoyt's blog post about how, having been raised in Marxist Portugal, she came here and realized that there was a Marxist kind of whisper campaign going on in the publishing industry when she was going to cons and stuff, and she described the continual fear in which she lived. And
Yeah.
more than one person in the comments agreed with her, and there were other writers who felt that they were being conspired against, and that this. The fact that Tor Books has been figured, Mr. Hayden at Tor Books has been fingered as one of the main perpetrators came as an infinite surprise to me. I've been working with Tor Books for years. They've never, no one has ever dropped
really
the slightest hint that my politics had anything to do with my professional relationship with them. They've never been impolite to me. I don't know. I don't know what these people are seeing and what they're talking about.
It is very possible that particular people who happen to work for Tor have certain possibilities without Tor itself, because John and I have never had any interaction with Tor where we came away feeling like they were politically motivated or not on our
side. Right.
But I had a slightly different question. What about the idea of a series? I've seen this bandied about, and I think it'd be a great idea. A series award from the Hugos. Best book as part of to come out this year, part of an ongoing series or something. Because it seems that people never vote for ongoing series books for the award. They tend to vote for the first book or standalone books. But some of these series are really good, and I mean, wouldn't we like to see our favorite series get a Hugo, either for one book or for the series as a whole?
I think that's a fantastic idea, but I wonder if there is this clique of like modern literary culture of death folks going on here, assuming for the sake of argument there is. I feel like series are probably not going to be very well looked upon by that clique, because in a series you have essentially you have to have heroes and heroism. No one's going to watch. Well, maybe Game of Thrones is going to shoot this down, but I still think people are. I still think people are watching Game of Thrones to see someone succeed.
But I also think in Game of Thrones the heroic elements or heroic aspects of the personality of the bad guys comes out.
Yeah.
All he's doing is killing off the people who you think are the heroes. So there's still some admirable qualities in that.
What about going the other way? What about the idea of asking Dragon Con or Comic Con, both of which are enormous, to offer an award, which would have a much more media, general populace-oriented fan group?
It's the Dragon Award.
The Dragon Award.
It's not a bad idea at all.
I recommend putting together an award that has a cash prize and gives it to the science fiction that has the most philosophical and longest words. I think that's important. And they should come by my house and give me more money.
Unfortunately, that's just going to be, it's going to happen, but it's going to be like your household, and the $3 you get from those of us in the house, 2 of the kids in the house won't vote. So it's only going to be, I'm sorry about that.
My wife got me a cup of tea this morning, and that was good enough for me. Let me say, as a conspiracy theory not here, let me say one other thing about this conspiracy theory. I don't think it's an out-and-out conspiracy. I think it is a meeting of the minds. I think it's a group of people who happen to think the same way because they adopt the same philosophy. It's a consensus. It's not a group of Illuminati sitting around a 9-sided table, snickering to each other, all wearing hooded robes or dressed like teddy bears or something.
Which is why they are so outraged at the claim that we make that it's a conspiracy, because they know they weren't in on a conspiracy. And even if there is a conspiracy for certain books, if a few people get together and do a whisper campaign for certain books, I think overall the 6,000 or so people who vote at a given Worldcon are not involved in that. They just happen to have a similar type of thinking.
Actually, go on, EJ.
Excuse me?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Ben. I think Ben was going to speak.
Right.
Well, I'll have to talk as a complete outsider here because I have not been exposed to any of these things, being outside the literary industry, completely new to this. I'm not very well read, but I'll just tell you one experience I had. And I was part of a small writers' forum, and lots of people posting their short stories and poetry. And basically all the poetry I came across that was beautiful and haunting was all very despairing, depressing. And it just struck me how easy it is to write something beautiful, haunting and depressing and just full of despair. And I sort of made a conscious effort to go the other way. And it's actually a lot harder to write something uplifting and beautiful than it is to write something...
Ben, that's a really good point. I think one of the reasons that we came up with the Superversive idea is because it's hard to write something that's just happy and have it not seem sappy. Easy to write something depressing and make it feel important. So trying to do the effort to write something that has a positive outlook that actually has quality writing, it actually is hard, and that's what we're trying to encourage here.
So I think it's maybe just the power of entropy could have a major effect on the culture, especially when we're not actively trying to invigorate it.
I submit yet again, it's a philosophical matter because the people who write that way believe in entropy. They believe that entropy is the thing that rules the universe. The people who write the other way believe someone else rules the universe. Person.
But I'm saying it's more than a philosophical matter. It's actually a technical matter. If you look at a TV show and they show a clean future set, it looks a little weird if they haven't put a lot of money and time into it. But if they throw a bit of dirt on it and some girders and they make it look like it's down, not down under in the Australian sense, but low and underground.
Well, since there's a new Mad Max movie coming out, we can speak of the Australian future for the moment.
But what I'm saying is that it immediately looks more interesting.
Appeal to the base is easier. Appeal to the base.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
Appeal to the basic emotions. Appeal to the easier things that get attention: fear, anger, despair. It's easier to do. It's intellectually lazy as opposed to heroism, which is the very point of standing against the darkness.
I respectfully disagree with it just being easiness, because sappy happy is also easy to do, and we're not flooded with sappy happy science fiction stories. We're flooded with despairing, depressing science fiction stories.
Sappy happy looks bad to everybody. The depressing and the grim only look bad to the people who disagree with it. Otherwise, it looks clever.
I like it on Pokemon when Ash defeats Team Rocket. That's fine with me.
I'll give you that.
I don't think it's an either-or question, though, because I can think of plenty of examples off the top of my head of something that does sort of delve into those sort of pathos emotions of the human condition, but eventually elevates itself out of it. There's a anime series I've written on a couple times called Razafon that, for the vast majority of the show, is pretty dark and brooding, but that by the end of the show it does manage to pull out heroism and a good ending.
I'll also point out that Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, if you reread it, you'll see that it is filled with despair. Those people are all struggling, and they have no hope of success, and they continue to struggle anyway because they got this sort of Norse attitude of it's almost a Wagnerian attitude of struggling against fate. And yet, the fact that they succeeded beyond all hope and expectation is a glorious reversal, a eucatastrophe, as Mr. Professor Tolkien would have put it.
Mm-hmm.
So let no one think I'm not against tragedy. I'm not against even grim, dark stories. What I'm against is the artistic vision that springs out of the culture of death, which is the idea that death is all there is, and that any belief in anything higher or nobler is an illusion. It's the cynicism.
And a waste of time.
Yeah, there we go. An illusion and a waste of time.
Arnold says that death will win. The idea that death will win.
Exactly.
And while while I've emphasized that it's meeting of the minds, I also have to say there is a little bit of a good old boys network going on behind the scenes with the Hugos. When Teresa Hayden came out with a blog post just the other day before the announcement had been made of who's won the nominations. She seemed to have spoken to people well enough to know that her favorites did not get the award.
First of all, keep in mind, conventions are run by ordinary people who don't really get paid. One of them may be a personal friend of hers, and that's not exactly the same thing as a secret network. And second of all, part of it is that means that people do go to tell their editors and their friends.
We used to live in Southern Maryland. It was run by a good old boys system, and the good old boys were all personal friends with each other, who would meet up at their gambling games or at their country clubs.
Right, but what I'm saying
is that
what I'm saying is that Worldcon is just a group of people who get together for camaraderie, and they've gone from being the center to a side part of fandom. So either Worldcon has to become more popular, Worldcon has to give up the Hugo to a bigger convention like DragonCon or Comic-Con, or there needs to be a new award given out by a convention like that is a popular convention.
I suggest that the award that originally went to short stories like Alamagusa and to novels like Dune, that small, big-eyed puppies get sad when it goes to writers who are hacks, who are just writing politically correct garbage. And I myself do not want to see puppies be sad. So I salute Larry Correa for starting this whole ball rolling. And I certainly salute Brad Torgerson. I certainly salute Brad Torgerson for manning the helm
taking up the banner. I mean, what I'd like to see is that the Hugos become more popular again. More people get involved in Worldcon, whether directly by going or through the supporting membership. And I think that's what the Sad Puppies is all about. But I don't blame those who've been willing to spend the money to go for being, having similar opinions. I just blame the rest of us for not participating.
I blame everyone who voted for If You Were a Dinosaur, My Love.
That was really
not a science fiction story. Once again, it's not a bad story, but it's
John,
not science fiction.
I hate to say it, but I think you were in SIFWA when that got voted in. So you were actually partially responsible.
No, I belive I quit before.
You had not quit before the voting. You quit after the voting.
I think I'll have to check my my calendar and talk to the Time Lords, because I'm going to go back and change the past so that I don't get blamed for that. I also wrote my own version of the story just to show the nice
that you could add science fiction.
How it's done, how you're supposed to actually do it to make it a science fiction story. Now, in all fairness, my story was 3 times the length of her story, so for a flash fiction, it was still pretty good.
And as you said, her problem with her story was that it was being claimed to be the best science fiction story of the year, not that it was a good or bad story.
Not that it wasn't the best angst-ridden, girly meditation on revenge against white males.
Well, exactly, it wasn't a story.
By the way, I'm from Virginia, by the way, so the Southerners there are like my people. I'm sorry, AJ, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to get it. We keep calling it a story, and to be fair, I don't think it was a story.
Vignette. It was a vignette.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well,
I was going to say... Oh, sorry.
Or a political statement.
It's like the people who wanted to put Terry Pratchett's last 3 tweets up as for best story, which was a cute idea, but really 3 tweets compared to someone who actually wrote a story, it doesn't quite seem fair.
Yes, it should go up to best haiku.
Go ahead.
I knew we were missing
Sorry, I was going to say about the Hugos. For many years, for me at least, I didn't know what the Hugos were. I mean, the Hugos and the Nebulas are science fiction. I knew them as the Hugo and the Nebulas are science fiction awards that Robert J. Sawyer won or got nominated for because it said so on his books. I literally didn't know. I really didn't know what they were. I mean, I gathered they were significant, and I love Robert J. Sawyer's writings. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, I like him too.
Let me just remind you guys, just so you know what we're talking about. 1953 was Demolished Man. 1965 was Highland's Double Star. 1958 was Fritz Lieber's The Big Time. 1959 was James Blish's A Case of Conscience, and 1960 was Heinlein's Starship Troopers. 1961 was Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr. If you guys don't know who I'm talking about and haven't read those books, then go out and read them. Okay.
I know.
Okay.
I know a number of those. Well, I've read some of those, and I mean, Starship Troopers is a magnificent book. The movie was better, but.
Well, I'm gonna hang up. I'm gonna hang up now.
We don't talk about the Bug Wars movie, particularly when John's there.
No, I know. I know John doesn't like it. It's just it's too easy.
But
teasing. He was teasing you earlier.
The list of honor here goes: Ringworld, Stand on Zanzibar, Left Hand to Darkness, Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny, Moon's a Harsh Mistress by Heinlein, Call Me Conrad by Zelazny, and then from that we get to Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. You know?
Yeah.
Well, enough people liked it, Jaji, that they voted for it in 1966, okay?
I'm the only one left.
Now, Isaac Asimov did win for Gods Themselves, but I thought that was a pity award because he had written so many good short stories.
Well, that's like my comment that sometimes people don't win for the work that's actually being awarded. They often win for a body of work that led to it, because the good work doesn't get recognized in time to give it an award. So people who are excited about it just give the next thing that same person does the award. Bro, you crazy.
Especially, books last a lot longer than a year.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, look at what happened to The Martian. Everyone wanted to vote for best book for the year for The Martian this year, and it hadn't made it to a popular audience until slightly too far after its eligibility date. That's exactly what it's. If that guy writes a book, it might win no matter what he says in it.
I only read The Martian late last year, and I loved it.
Excellent.
Pity Matt Damon's going to be in the film. I don't like him anymore, but.
Well, there's an argument.
They're making a film. That's exciting.
If you apply the same rules that allowed Old Man's War to win to The Martian should be eligible.
Yeah, I didn't get that either. I didn't understand why they didn't do that.
I don't know enough about the minutiae, but I imagine if you continue expanding the circle through things such as what's recently being done, that you will eventually have it come more in line with what the actual fans are buying. And that, of course, is really what any sort of thing like that would have to be about in the long run, because people crave heroism, they crave people seeking success, they look to the light rather than the darkness. I think that will move that in that direction. Slow process, but eventually.
My hope is that any success that Sad Puppies gets on the current Hugo nomination slate will act to make... Many of the people who didn't vote with Sad Puppies seem to not even be aware that those stories even exist. And it would be really nice to have them reach a wider public, including people who might really like them, who were voting for the things that won the last few years because they weren't even aware that there was something else out there.
I think when all is said and done, one of the strongest things that's going to come out of Sad Puppies is a better awareness of this whole process. I mean, prior to maybe 4 years ago or so, what I knew about the Hugos was that Ender's Game had one, Hyperion had one, some other fantastic novels had one. So, and now with the Sad Puppies, whether or not, the slate goes anywhere, I hope it does, but I'm much more aware of what's going on in this whole Hugo process, and I think that's probably being reflected with all the drama that's going on. So
it is exciting. It is, and it'll be interesting to see how things shake out 5 hours from now. John, you were saying before about a conspiracy, and I think Judgy was saying a couple of others said it maybe not so much a conspiracy, it's just they all agree with each other. I read a couple of things during the week. I've also been following Gamergate for ages. And someone was going, oh no, Sad Puppies is linked with Gamergate. It was like, yeah, of course it is. They're natural allies. But a couple of months ago, a year ago now, with Gamergate, a whole lot of Gamers is Dead articles came out, and it turns out
in the same week,
a whole lot of these people were. They may not have been deliberately conspiring behind the scenes, but they all sort of think on the same wavelength, and they all think the same. They all talk the same. they all come up with the same ideas at roughly the same time. If it's not a conspiracy, it's an odd coincidence. But also, something else I read this week.
Well, keep in mind, I don't know if
Was
I live in the South, and the way we do things in the rural South is there's a few old families that came over before the Mayflower, and that run everything. All the judges, all the county commissioners, the newspapers, the major industries, the banks in town are all run by the same small group of families, and you have to be. It's a patron-client system like in ancient Rome. I'm making a reference to ancient Rome as if you guys would understand it more than you understand the South. It's a system where
like
you owe,
Patreon. There we go. That's hip enough.
You owe loyalty like the mob. You owe loyalty to a guy who's highly placed. In return, he protects you and guards your interests. And nothing is based on merit. Everything is based on bloodline and loyalty. And so when the clique is a small group that also has a philosophical aura around it to attract. No one, for example, would be attracted to the Mattingly family of Southern Maryland. Okay, they're just not. They don't stand for anything. Okay, the Mattingleys. But if the Mattinglys, in addition, also had a banner that they flew that said, "We are here against all the oppression of the West. We are here to undermine Christianity." Everyone who agreed that the West was oppressive would naturally flock to them. So that's what I think is kind of going on with this thing that's not quite a conspiracy, not quite a rabbit warren, not quite a bowl of mush, not quite a good old boy system. It's a clique. It's like being a bunch of mean girls in high school who all know each other, who are mean to everyone who's outside the group. It's what C.S. Lewis called the inner ring. The whole point of having an inner ring is so that you can exclude people from the ring. And that makes Puppies sad, so we want to put a stop to it.
I was extremely amused in a sad way by the quote that Vox Day posted yesterday. He had a quote from a few years ago where he had copied over somebody from that group saying that they should exclude Vox from their community, and it was very specific why and what. And then a quote from last week of somebody saying, how do we bring the brunt of disapproval of the community on someone who's not a member? And of course,
Yes.
I think the irony there is obvious.
The reason why in a lot of old westerns the stranger who comes into town is the guy who ends up as the hero gunfighter is because the Old West was run the same way. You would have a clique of patrons and clients, and they would form the community, and the disapproval of the community was the mechanism of organization and control. I don't want to call it peer pressure because peer pressure implies that it's involuntary. It's people voluntarily want to know from their little group what the acceptable behaviors are because they want to be in the group. They want to be in the inner circle. They want to be on the good side of the people in charge. And the outsider, the man with no name, he has no strings on him.
Yeah.
Like Ultron.
I was waiting for somebody to go there.
I was thinking Pinocchio, but
So is he.
oh no, because of course Ultron's quoting Pinocchio, isn't he? I haven't seen the movie yet. Has it come out yet?
No,
I didn't
not
see
yet.
No.
You're not supposed to reveal the secrets of the movie before it comes out.
Kind of like the nominations.
It was in the trailer.
No, I'm kidding. It was in the trailer. I know it was in the trailer.
Where were we?
We were comparing Pinocchio with Data on Star Trek.
No, but that's really funny.
Oh, I was going to say another thing about the Hugos. I meant to write something on this, but I never got around to it. I'm slack like that. Have you ever noticed? It seems the Hugos. It always felt to me. Or it felt to me when I sort of started reading up about when Larry kicked off Sad Puppies, and I sort of became aware of exactly what appeared to be going on and stuff. The Hugos seem to be turning into the Nobel Peace Prize. Am I the only one that thought that?
The same thing happened to the Nobel Peace Prize. John and I were in China when Obama won that prize, and the Chinese American newspaper had to print a second issue where they assured their foreign readers that it had not been a joke.
I myself think President Obama should win the Hugo Award for his science fiction.
for his science fiction title, Tales from My Father, yes, or whatever it was called.
I was thinking more of the science fiction
General
involving Obamacare, where
policy.
you end up with getting money from nowhere to pay for something that you can't pay for. But yeah. No, I mean, just to give the award not based on merit is the whole thing we're arguing about. If the awards are based on merit, then the Hugo Award stands for it being meritorious. If the awards are based on political correctness, then the Hugo Award is a leper's bell warning you not to pick up that book because it's politically correct. It was given either because of the race or sex of the author or of the message. It's message fiction.
The award should be something where 30 or 50 or 100 years from now, when the issues are different as they were 30 or 100 years ago.
Years from now, Joshy.
The book is still.
Years from now.
The book is still worth. Yeah, but it's been 30 years now. 20, 30 years this has been going on. Could you take him outside? So it should be something where later on, when you don't know the issues, you don't know what's going on, the book is still worth reading.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. You can read The Time Machine by H.G. Wells and have absolutely no opinion about the class structure of England in the late Victorian era, and not even being aware that that's what the book is actually about, and enjoy it tremendously, enjoy it perfectly well.
Here.
So you can, and he clearly had a message in his book, but it didn't get in the way of the book. Okay.
And that also encompasses the problems we have with time travel fiction now. I mean, to call that stuff that romantic fiction, which is all it is, science fiction, is insane, especially when you compare it to, H.G. Wells and other people's work.
Well, you're completely right. The time travel romance has been around at least since Green Darkness, which was written in the 30s or 50s or something. And it's its own genre, and it's not science fiction and fantasy. Some people like to include it, but it really isn't.
No,
it's really something else.
It's because women know that men in the past were real He-Men, and we modern guys are lumps.
Look, as someone who
exactly.
No, seriously, as someone who dabbles in writing romance stories, not real romance, but romance stories require taboos. You have to have something that keeps your main characters from getting together. It's a lot easier to do in the past than it is in the present. If you want to have a character from the present deal with that kind of thing, time travel is your obvious answer.
Oh, it works well. I'm just saying
that's also why girls fall in love with vampires and werewolves in paranormal romances, because they're also taboo. You can't fall in love with a vampire.
Exactly. I have an essay on this that's been bandied around as people's favorite essay occasionally, and it's basically the same thing. You need a guy who's going to be stronger than the girl, and in the modern age, it's hard to do that. So if you want to have a tough girl like Buffy, you have to have a tougher guy. The guy has to be the vampire or the werewolf. The reason he's a vampire and a werewolf and not a robot or an elf is that elves and robots are kind of the girl has to pursue them, and it doesn't work as well for a romance. But if vampires and werewolves get overcome by passion, so they go after the girl. So it's just what you need for the recipe.
I have this half-formed plot idea in my head for a romance novel where a WorldCon secret clique voter is chasing after a sad puppy author.
Okay, now I want to read that. Oh, that's cute.
I'll let you write it. I don't do romance fiction. So. Macross is about as close as I'll come to a romance.
You should go with Min-May.
Sorry, someone else was going to. I was going to say one thing about the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, I agree, Obama winning it was a joke, but I was actually thinking, Yasser Arafat won one. He's like a murderous terrorist, and he won that years ago.
Yeah.
And what is it? Al Gore won one for his
fiction work.
Maybe he could have won a Hugo for that.
Didn't Al Gore win it for fiction?
Yeah,
no,
he won
unfortunately.
for Inconvenient Truth.
He won for fiction. Yeah.
And
because the Apocalypse of St. John is no longer current with the fashionable set. They prefer to write their own apocalypses, not waiting for visions from heaven as to what's actually going to happen, but they want to terrify us with. Is it cow farts now? Are we afraid of global cooling? I forget what it is.
Barbecue girls.
Is it EDT? Is it we're going to wipe out all the birds by means of a chemical that doesn't have any effect on bird eggs? Is that what the fear is now?
I think
hole in the ozone layer. Oh no, wait, that was a fraud too. You know, if these guys just use their energy picking up litter by the roadside, then the world would be more beautiful.
As long as you don't cry.
By the way,
Is that dangerous now too, Brian?
That guy was an Italian, that American
Yes.
Indian.
Yeah.
Was an Italian actor.
Was he really?
Yes.
But he had a nice wig.
He did.
Some people think he forgot by the end of his life that he had made it up. Poor guy.
Oh dear. Oh, can I also say thank you to everyone who's listening, all 8 of you at the moment. Hello. Sorry we don't have... someone asked about enabling audience comments. I'd love to. I can't figure out how. Next time. I will figure this out for next time, I promise you.
Yeah, I would like to see those too, so...
People could write in comments somewhere else on Superversive SF, and you can keep them and then, read them to us next
Well,
time.
if you post, I'm looking at the YouTube stream of it at the moment. If you post comments there, I'll relay the questions for people.
Yeah, there's a leave a reply under the spot on Superversive SF.
Okay, I better open that too. I'll get on top of this technology. It's not like it's my day job or anything.
About the Peace Prize, have any of you heard of Václav Havel? He was the Czech president, the first Czech president of the country when it came out from communism, and he organized the Velvet Revolution that freed the whole country from communism without firing a single shot, no violence, utterly peaceful revolution, unique. And he personally said that he never wanted to be given a Nobel Peace Prize because Yasser Arafat had been given one and didn't want to be in the same group as him.
Bravo.
It's a mockery of the whole thing.
Bravo. Yeah. And
Well,
by the
any
way,
club,
there's
I
at
don't
least
want anything
one
to do with
writer.
any club that would have me.
There's at least one writer who not a nobody, who said who would not take a Hugo Award because he thinks they've been demeaned to that point. Now I don't agree with him. I think they can be rescued from being a leper's bell of rotten message fiction to being once again a trumpet of glorious speculative fiction.
The thing that makes
It's
me
not
the
like
saddest.
this has been a problem for that many years. This is
I would say 2008 was when the turning point was myself.
Yeah, I think it's been recent. Unlike the Oscars that's been going on for 30, 40 years, I think it's recent in science fiction. But what makes me really sad is how skewed the sad puppy message is, but when it's reaching a lot of people who are general science fiction fans who really don't know what's going on, because really it's about not about getting awards for particular people. It's about taking back the Hugo, which we admire, and making it something we feel is fair. It's not that we're objecting that a particular book wins. We're objecting that we want to feel for certain that the book that wins is, in fact, the best book out there that the fans in general have had a chance to vote for.
Well, the clique conflates everything
Worthy.
with politics, and they can't fathom us not doing the same, so they think our motive has to be political.
Right, and there are people who feel it's political in the Sad Puppies movement, but I don't think that's what. I mean, I don't think that's where Brad is, for instance. He's not in the same political page.
In all the Sad Puppies discussions I've not had one person say, let's promote this author because he's a conservative. No one talks that way.
Right.
And they're not all conservatives.
I mean that they feel that the issue is good writing against politics. And,
yeah, that's the issue. The issue is writing versus politics, art versus politics. It's not an issue of politics versus politics. It's art versus politics. And I forget who said it. Someone just now. They can't conceive of that.
Yeah.
Which of you said? Was it Brian? Said that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good, Brian.
Thank you.
And that just shows the sad limitation of their mindset and the reason why their stories are sad and limited. Because they can't imagine anything outside of their small group of motivations, which are based on retaliation for imagined past wrongs.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was over at Brad's blog the other day trying to pound this idea into the thick skulls of of the Chorf clique that we just want orcs to be evaluated on their merits, and he said, no, nonsense, everything is politics.
Yeah, and to anybody who thinks everything is politics, this seems like politics. But to people who don't think that way, it's not. And not everybody thinks that way. Certainly a lot of viewers don't think that way.
My wife is using the word think to refer to a process that involves brain cells in motion, but it's not the way we normally use the word think. I just want to point that out.
Well, no, they're meat robots.
That's not true. Look, they are all
vigorously.
They are all the image and likeness of God, John. All of them. Even the ones that seem the most robot-like.
God was making a funny face in the mirror when he took that image, though. Because
ouch.
Well,
that is not true.
I was referring to myself
That's
as well.
true of you.
Oh, it is true of me. Are you kidding? God put on some weight before he made me.
Your children are laughing.
God's got a sense of humor. Look at the avocado pit. Look at the avocado pit and the ostrich. But to a guy who thinks that everything is politics has narrowed his world to a few issues that cause anger and despair, and that's all that's left in his life.
Well, it depends. I hate to sound a little bit like Clinton. It depends upon what "is" means, but it does depend upon what you mean by political. There's a really good argument that everything is political because there's a certain way we're all raised, certain set of beliefs we have that have been done, but through either experience or genetically or whatever. So
yeah, but EJ,
everything is political.
If I
we have
said
like socks on is political then.
But if I said everything is religious, everything is based on your faith, wouldn't my argument just the same as yours?
Yep.
When I put my socks on glorifies God?
Yep.
Okay, so my suggestion then is that their political belief is a cult, is a religious belief, not a political belief. Because
Father?
I'm with you, my friend.
There we go.
Story first. You have a great
That's
story.
Wright, my son, talking.
You have an idea.
It's
But
not
the story
political,
is-
it's philosophical. Your philosophy is what you base everything off of. Your politics, your religion, everything. That's what... So that's
Sure.
everything is more...
But
So that's
as
a
a-
closer analogy.
As a philosopher, I find it objectionable that people substitute politics for philosophy. And they substitute canvassing for ratiocination, for philosophical thinking. They don't have debates anymore. They have campaigns.
And no offense to EJ, but I would say personally that anyone who says that everything is political uses the term politics equivocally. I mean, Aristotle showed us that politics refers to the best way to organize the state.
The laws. Yeah.
The polity.
The comment that puzzled me the most that I saw when at Making Light was the person who said, I don't understand, since we told them last year that we don't approve of the way they're doing this, why they did it again. And the person was completely sincere. And while you guys are laughing, I do not laugh at this person, but I feel completely baffled because I keep thinking, well, you're not even in the same community. Told who? What, you mean you blogged about it on your blog? I mean, it just really took me aback because I kind of felt like it was a bridge I didn't know how to cross.
The slave cannot imagine how the free man thinks. The darkness cannot encompass the light. They just have no idea what they're dealing with.
But if I was the member of a regular going to the Hugos, I went and spent the $1,000 it takes every year to go to Worldcon, and then I saw people who were not the people I'd been seeing for 20, 30 years making a big fuss and trying to, look to me, hijack the nominations. I think I'd be really annoyed. Even if once I learned their ideas, I thought they were right, it would seem to me like they were trying to get the benefit for something they didn't work for. So I have a lot of sympathy for them. But I don't think that we've.
It's not like I'm an outsider to the science fiction world.
No,
I've been publishing since 1990. Well, I've been to Worldcon.
We've been to Worldcon. It's the only convention.
It was the only convention I kind of didn't like.
Unfortunately, the 2 times we went to Worldcon, it was kind of not all that. Well, one of the times I was pregnant and sick, so I can't really blame the convention for that.
Yeah, I was not pregnant and sick, and it was not a good convention.
But it's the opposite of World Fantasy Con, which I've been there 3 times, and each time it's been like one of my favorite conventions. I don't know why. I'm not sure what the difference is, but it's just a strange little thing.
Maybe it's
My
newer.
first Worldcon will probably be in 2020 when New Zealand's got a bid in. If they get it, I'll be able to get over to it.
That would be cool.
It would be fun, but yeah.
Well, if you have to read Hole in the Zero, I believe the author's name is M.K. Joseph. I think he's the only New Zealander science fiction writer that I know. He wrote in the 60s. Joseph is not the right name.
Writing about sheep.
Oh no, Samuel Butler's Erawan. Samuel Butler's Erawan is also counts.
Isn't Chuck Finley out of New Zealand?
Now I'm embarrassed that I don't remember.
What about David Freer? Is he Australian or New Zealand?
South African, I think.
NK, I was right about the name. N.K. Joseph, and it was 1967. So.
Very good.
Okay. Well,
and
anyway,
my sister was living in Australia a few years back, and she bought one of my books, and it was because of that I could claim I was an international author.
There you go. Well, it's easy to be an international author these days with Amazon. Yay! Yeah.
That's true.
Yes.
Actually, there's something interesting. I'd be interested to know what other people think of this. Does anybody else think now is a really amazing time to be trying to publish stuff?
Yes.
It's very exciting. You know, you want to talk about the process of writing. This is a very exciting time because everything is changing. We have no idea a couple of years from now what it will be like. It is much, much easier to be published than it's ever been, and it's a little harder to get attention than it was before because there's so many people to compete against, and yet some people get attention and go rising to the top. So it's a very exciting time.
Being out of it for 20 years was an absolute shock. The last thing I submitted, when I was submitting before, it was all postal.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as doing it on it. And I mean, you wait 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and just hope they got the damn thing. And
EJ, my editor at Castalia Books, Castalia House, I shoot off an email to him, and he sends me back a copy of the electronic version of what the cover art is going to look like, and we talk, once every week or once every 2 weeks. In the old days, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, by mail, I would not hear from Tor Books except once a year, once every 6 months.
I'm video chatting with both of them.
And Castalia has to put out 5 of my books in a year, instead of 1 a year, like Tor does. It's just astonishing. It's just amazing to me, the amount of feedback.
We're also very lucky that this is also a time when science fiction has become more popular. Otherwise, it'd be impossible to get into it.
We rule because every blockbuster movie, every big seller movie is a science fiction or has some sort of fantastical element to it. All the top grossers, except for like Gone with the Wind. If you look at the record for the top grossing films.
What have you?
Absolutely.
What have you those of us who've actually gone to from the short story to the novel section, and what do you think about the process of moving to the novel, getting that first or second or third out, and creating that presence, especially in this electronic environment that we now find ourselves in? What are your opinions and thoughts and recommendations for up-and-comers on that?
I'm in the process of doing that as we speak, and
in fact, with his other hand, he's electronically mailing out a manuscript right now.
the power of
He's got 2 screens open. He's multitasking.
I thought about it.
Well, I'm checking my Gmail alternately to see if my artist has sent me my cover art yet, but
I just checked mine, and mine has.
Oh, you win. But no,
sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. Go ahead. I
know. This is your wand. That's okay. So it's been really eye-opening because I started attempting to break into this business, like fully set on doing it the traditional way, and it's only slowly, as new information has come in over the years I've been working Break-In, that I've really realized that the old system is passing away, and the new is coming in full force in a way that we can't even imagine. So, I mean, like you were saying, it used to take months to write a book, and then, shove it around to an editor and agent. Once a publisher decided to pick it up, it could take 18 months, or it could take 2 years from the time you finish to the time it comes out.
Took me 5 years from when I finished the manuscript for the Golden Age to when someone bought it.
Wow. And now it can...
It took me 17 years to go from when I wrote my book to when it got published.
Right, and now you can finish it and publish it yourself a week later.
Yeah, we have a friend who does that. He writes stuff, and the moment it's done, he just sticks it up on Amazon and sends us a copy.
Yeah.
Well, this is what struck me as... Oh, sorry, I was going to say, this is what struck me as amazing about the whole thing. I mean, I tried Sci-Fi Journal probably 5 or 6 years ago now, and I sold... What did I sell? 6 copies, and it sort of died edition 1. It was a bit of a disaster. But this time around, I mean, I'm just some guy in Australia doing this on the train on my way to work because I've got a long commute. And oh, good morning, my dear. That's my wife wandering in the background.
Hello.
It's
Good morning.
She's waking up at 3 in the morning.
3 in the morning here, so I'm the only one awake except for one of the dogs. So she's sort of awake, she's wandering around.
She might not be awake and wandering around, poor lady.
I think he's barely awake. Sorry, as I was saying, I mean, like, I'm some guy in Australia. I'm doing this sort of, well, I'm doing it out of my own pocket, but I'm doing it just, in sort of a home office. People are submitting stories. I'm paying people. It's published on Amazon. I have paper copies of it sitting in my bedroom at the moment that are done print on demand. It's amazing. I mean, I couldn't imagine. I don't know. I haven't been doing this all that long, but for you guys that have been in the industry for years, it just seems like it's changed so much, and it's so easy now.
And you've got more than 6
got
copies out.
Yeah, and but you've still got to do all the hard work of actually writing it or putting it together and assembling it and all that. But the barrier to entry is like
almost zero.
There isn't any more. It's zero in terms of how hard it is to do. I mean, like,
it's like
here we go.
On the computer.
I'm an engineer from Australia. What the hell do I know about writing?
Well, let me tell you a real quick story about the. Let me tell you a real quick story about the time I decided not to be a lawyer. I went in for a job interview with a law firm, a major law firm, and I had just gotten out of a law school and was working temp jobs. And one of the interviewers said to me, "Why are you trying to get a job with this large firm? Why don't you hang out your own shingle?" Because any lawyer, once he gets a degree, once he gets his official passes the bar, can merely put a sign out in front of his house saying, legal services, walk-ins welcome. And I didn't really have an answer to it for him for why I didn't hang at my own shingle. And he kind of said, a lot of lawyers don't want to hang out their own shingle, and they're just not willing to go it alone, the one-man corporation, because they're cowards. They don't really want to be lawyers. And I thought to myself, I really don't want to be a lawyer. But the point of this story is not about me. The point of the story is nowadays anyone can hang out his own shingle in terms of being a writer. You don't need to go to a major corporation. You don't need to go to a big law firm. You don't need to go to New York to be a writer. So when I got started, and I'm not that old. When I got started 10, 20 years ago, was it 90? You had to go to the New York publishers to get published. You had to get a New York.
The small presses back then were so small that it was.
They were vanity press. They were considered vanity press, and I was
they
not
were
willing
small
to look
presses,
into
but
them
they had no way to reach a large audience. They would maybe publish in, the state or two near where they lived. They had no distribution, and now with Amazon, that's just not an issue.
Right. I mean,
to say nothing of Go ahead.
Go.
I was just going to say nothing of ebooks. You know, the barrier to entry is even lower. You don't even need a printer. All you need is a PDF.
Yeah.
Gentlemen,
Yeah.
I've stopped reading
I don't know if
hardcover
everybody knows
books.
this, but with Amazon, with CreateSpace, you just click a link, one button, and Amazon will automatically print and send a book to anybody who wants one for any ebook. Now, a lot of things don't have that set up, but I have a friend who puts his stuff up. He does that. He can instantly get a book with the same cover he puts on his ebook. Costs like
I
$8.
can attest to the fact that it's not that easy to publish on CreateSpace. It's kind of fiddly.
Well, once you know what to do. I mean, he does it with very little effort. I assume that means that he's worked on
She was not talking about Australians.
Yeah, they make it harder for them. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. That
Everything
explains
is
a lot.
Everything is offset by 6 months and 12 hours.
But Josh's point actually segues really well to what I was going to say, which is, along with that low barrier to entry, there is a price to be paid, which is now you, the writer, must take on all of the rights and responsibilities and obligations of a publisher.
Getting that
Right.
word out.
Even
And
so,
there are places where that really gets into trouble. I tell you two. One is libraries won't deal with independent writers. You have to join some kind of publisher or group, something like Book Cafe, Bookview Cafe, or something. If nobody knows what Bookview Cafe is, it's a group of science fiction, fantasy authors, maybe mystery too, who've gotten together to act like a little publishing company, so they can do things like sell their books to libraries, and they support each other.
Joe Conrath is working on that too.
Yeah, Brenda Clough is a friend of ours who's involved with that. But the other thing is, a convention organizer once told me that they were really pleased that John and I agreed to come because they get lots of requests from people who say they're authors, but they don't have any information about who these people are. And sometimes they show up at the conventions and they do well, and sometimes they show up at the conventions and they just talk about their book and they don't really understand that you're supposed to be talking about the panel subject and the other kind of professional things that a professional science fiction or fantasy writer would do. And I felt tremendous sympathy for them, because if there's, if instead of having X number of New York authors, there's now, X times a million numbers of internet authors, there's no way for them to tell
no gatekeeper
who is going to be interesting to their audience and who isn't. And it's hard for them to say no. So they suddenly find themselves with a much larger group of people who want to come and get in for free, and they don't always live up to the obligations that go along with doing that. So that's just a small example, but the same thing happens to readers, of course. Readers now don't know where to look. Things like Goodreads do indicate to some degree, but to some degree they don't know where to go.
Yeah, that's why blogs are important to announce to people what your style is like. Anyway, Dave.
And it's why the reviewer blogs get so much attention. And some of these reviewer blogs are very much in the same side as the people who are currently voting for the Hugos. And some of the reviewer blogs are, more like Geek of Faith type blogs. But finding out which reviewers tend to have a similar taste and trying to get their attention is really important, because people are going to them if they like what the person has posted before, because they don't know where else to pick their books from.
That is one of the downsides, I suppose, of the new age.
It has an up and a downside depending on where you stand, I guess.
The difficult part, it seems, must be getting kind of the word out. Normally, the publisher house would do all of that work. They would get the shelf space in the bookstores, which no longer exist, and a number of other things of that nature.
Still exist as coffee shops.
Yeah. It looks like it's pretty much mostly the messaging of that seems to have changed dramatically, and must be very confusing.
And it's really hard. I can tell you, with John and I, before Larry Correa took pity on us, we were kind of floundering. And even with Tor's help.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I mean, even if you do sign with a major publisher, the odds that you're going to get co-op and promotion, and that they're going to put your books prominently in Barnes & Noble is a crapshoot. I mean, it's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
And this is something I'm not that happy to talk about, but my later books that Tor put out, they couldn't get them into Barnes and Nobles. There's different opinions of why something went wrong with the second book, and but whatever it happened, because the second book in hardcover did not sell as much as they expected, they wouldn't carry the rest of the series.
Yeah, and it's automatic.
Neither the soft cover that might have sold, nor the third book, which had a much better cover. It just, and Tor tried, and some showed up in some places, but in this whole metropolitan area here, not a single Barnes & Noble picked it up, and there was nothing that they could do.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Barnes & Noble has an automatic ordering system that if your book sold less than expected or the previous one, they automatically order less of the next one, and
It's a death spiral.
Yeah.
My friend John Henry, who writes as Jack Campbell, had to change his name because of that. And
Jack Campbell does really
selling
well.
like hotcakes. Yeah, if you've ever read his Anabasis in Space, he didn't call it that. Lost Fleet books.
Yes.
Nice,
And
quick, good read. I mean, just a popcorn type read.
It was
solid book. And
it was suggested to me that I try that too, and I'm like, I had to live with Lamplighter my whole life. I don't want to give it up now,
I wouldn't have let her. She's not willing to give up Lamplighter for me. It's not going to give up for readers.
We have a question.
Yeah.
Ooh.
We have a question. One of Lee has posted on the YouTube page the chorfs or smovs, that the new word that Brad's trying to use. I forget what it means. Fear the democratization of the Hugos. The loss of control of the Hugos will curtail their ability to gatekeep, socially engineer, and push agendas. The same applies to publishing. They fear this change. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
Even though I'm the main
Thank you for the question,
conspiracy theory, even though I'm the main conspiracy theory guy, I will respectfully disagree because I think that the motivations of the Morlocks, as I call them, is only partly political, partly because they worship the devil, and partly because they simply like the kind of books that they themselves like, and they don't want to see any intrusion into their little sandbox. I mean, part of it's honest and part of it's dishonest. So I don't think it's just all dishonest.
I do think that people do fear change.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big things going on now. But on the other hand, I think that it's not really much that anybody who's afraid can do about it. So we don't want to make it. Yeah, I feel like there's no need in rubbing salt into the wounds that are already there, so to speak.
It may be
I will mention also the other reason why they dislike it is because they worship Moloch and they sacrifice babies and they like to see puppies be sad. They go out and kick puppies, these people. My son is upbraiding me. No, they don't actually kick puppies. I'm kidding about that. The Moloch thing, though, yes. Called abortion.
Anyone else?
Yeah. My other son handed me a piece of paper on which he had very carefully written, even though his handwriting is bad, a question. It wasn't really the type of question that we're discussing here, but I'll repeat it just out of honor to his efforts, which was his question was, which was better, hard sci-fi or soft sci-fi?
Hard.
Medium rare.
Medium rare.
I like soft
Love
sci-fi.
both, but sadly, hard sci-fi isn't for everybody. Soft sci-fi is generally going to be some popularization stuff that gets a lot of people into it. I was fortunate enough to discover Larry Niven's Neutron Star at an early age and fell in love immediately, but I don't know that everyone's going to love it necessarily.
I think hard sci-fi is a little harder to write, and therefore it's a little hard to find good
hence
hard
the
sci-fi.
name. Like writing a sonnet to a strict meter, it requires more discipline to turn out good hard science fiction. I don't do hard science fiction myself. I do more space opera stuff. But when I do put something scientific in it, I make sure it's accurate. And there are so many astronomical wonders in the real outer space of the real world we really live in that I took a vow never to make up anything when it came time to putting something astonishing or jaw-dropping in the heavens, because they're already there. It's already amazing. There's a star called the Pistol Star. There's a star called the Pistol Star that puts out more energy than the entire arm of the galaxy we're in. It's a real star. The Milky Way is going to ram into the Andromeda Galaxy in 4 billion years. We're on a collision course with Andromeda, which is 4 times our size. That's real. That's actually happening. There's a star near us, I forget its name, that is piling along at 13% of the speed of light. That has belay that. That's something like 5 or 8% of the speed of light, and it's got a tail of debris matter issuing from its photosphere that's 13 light years long, like the way a child would draw a comet. That's real. I didn't make that up. There's a star made out of collapsed diamond. There's a star that's made of degenerate matter that's a diamond star. That's real. I didn't make that up. It's 50 light years away.
I did a piece recently, and I haven't sold it yet, about a problem with time dilation and relationships. And I couldn't believe how many stars were close enough that would function and work with alien species so that I could have this happen with virtually any time period I wanted using like about 90% light speed. It just all worked out. They were there, and they had really neat names and everything else. I didn't have to make
there's an online thing you can download for free called, I think it's Coronis, that I use for my star mapping because I try to get all the distances correct for all the nearby stars. And within 50 light years, there's dozens of stars that are about the same size, age, and color as the Sun, which are likely candidates for Earth-like life.
SoulStation.com is a good one too.
SoulStation.com is, in fact, if you
more than 50 light years out.
If you read SoulStation.com, you will see a list of all the planets of all the stars that I used in my Empyrean Commonwealth of Man in my 4th book in my current series.
It has become so much easier to do hard science fiction, but it takes so much more research time.
I remember in the book Friday, Robert Heinlein included 2 charts of nearby local stars, and he picked ones, not the ones with famous names like Arcturus and Sirius, but ones like HR plus 7682, HR 7703 and listed it out. That must have taken him a bunch of elbow grease and brain work, because I could do that with my computer with SoulStation or with the computer program I just mentioned. There is now no reason for science fiction writers. There's no excuse for science fiction writers to get their astronomy wrong. To get their for someone to say, well, the star Sirius is 1,000 light years away. Okay, there's no excuse anymore for that. I'm speaking.
Yeah, I just have to, because you went and brought it up. I just have to mention that I still have a 4-foot by 2-foot cover photo of Friday, the cover shot, in my living room. I really loved that book.
I was referring to some of his old tricks with that one, I thought.
Yeah, certainly, but that's what made it good.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like his later stuff. I like his juveniles. I don't like his seniles.
There you go.
David, you were going to say something?
Well, as long as we're still talking about hard sci-fi and soft sci-fi, I usually describe my writing, I'm still a nobody, but as like hard sensibilities.
You're not a nobody. You're published in Sci-Fi Journal.
That's true.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're published
when I'm a
there,
somebody, you'll be a somebody. We'll get there.
You and me both. I have 2 reasons for like hard sensibilities in my writing. One is that I'm terrible with math, which is why I'm in theology and not the sciences. The other one is I feel like sometimes hard sci-fi ages badly as we learn more about the universe. Then some of the science we gets a little like wonky, and so I usually just try to stick with the generalities of hard sci-fi rather than like actually going out. But that has to do with like the way I plot and everything too. So
theology
that's a little sad because of course I found that rereading H.G. Wells as opposed to Jules Verne. Jules Verne's science was spot on.
Yeah.
But when I described some of the things to my children, they said, "Oh, that's steampunk," and I had to clutch my nose and go, "No, it's the other way around." But his science was spot on accurate. When he described the moonshot being launched from Florida in America, the reason why he selected Florida, which at the time he wrote was controlled by the Seminole Indians, he did it for astronomically correct reasons, having to do with the closer you are to the equator, the easier it is to make orbit. That having to do with the math of the Newtonian math of how to shoot a projectile from Earth to Moon.
Yeah.
But the Time Machine I could read. I don't have to explain it or excuse it to anyone. I don't have to say, oh well, back in this day, the Nautilus was still make believe, and it was still powered by electricity and whatever.
Well, and then I look at in Dune, they have like some old technology in there, tapes instead of computers or whatever. But they also have the Butlerian jihad.
In Dune, they got rid of all computers.
Right. Exactly, right. And that covers a multitude of sins.
Did you know where the word Butlerian for the Butlerian jihad came from? I just found out this week. It comes from Samuel L. Butler's Erawan. In Erawan is a utopia set in a mythical island near Australia, where the people there are so convinced of the Darwinian process by which things evolve, which in Darwin was a brand new theory at the time, but they were afraid of all clockworks and machines, for fear the machines would one day rise up and be superior to the human beings. This was written in like 1850 or something. It's really an old book, and so Samuel Butler was the first guy to propose the idea that people would do away with machines as a possible threat. And I'm sure I don't know, but I'm confident that that's where Herbert got the name.
Makes sense.
That's pretty interesting.
There you go.
And as long as we're on the subject of you being a newbie, sir, I want to mention that with the Sci-Fi Journal, this is a juried market. Someone else has decided that your stuff is worth publishing, and that's a very big step.
Very
thank
true.
you.
Very well said.
And he paid me quite well, so.
in one of my John Wright's 10 rules on writing, my final rule, rule number 11 of my 10 rules. As you can see, I also am bad with math. That's why I went into philosophy. is when you get a rejection slip, be thankful, because it is a juried system. Because if you're getting a rejection slip, you now are getting negative feedback information as to what will sell and what will not sell. And if the rejection slip is actually accompanied by a handwritten note or some actual feedback, then you know even better. That means the editor thought that what you were writing was good enough to take the time to critique.
When I was a kid,
when I was young, you had to collect about 100 of them before you made your first sale. And I have no idea what the statistics are now. The market is much too different for me even to guess how many.
When I was in college, I had my note that I got back from George Sithers at Fantasy and Science Fiction, as well as one other, and I don't remember what the other one was. I had them taped to my wall, my first rejection notes. It was proof that I had written something. And John and I, between us, and mainly John, did get over 100 rejections before he found
No, it was exactly 100 before I made my first
it was both of us, but only a few were mine. Most of them were his.
Right.
So it was exactly spot on. Even though he'd been saying that for years before that came around.
Now I did not know what the statistic was for book rejections. So when I was sending out my book and getting rejected, I didn't have a number in mind so I could go, well, this is just rejection number 58. I need to get 59 and then 60 until I get to 100. And 100, by the way, is an average. 100 is an average. Bradbury got over 1,000. That's Ray Bradbury, okay? Martian Chronicles, Ray Bradbury. Something Wicked This Way Comes, Ray Bradbury. That Ray Bradbury. Yeah, he got 1,000 rejections before he made his first sale. So if you're giving up before 1,000, then you are a wimp. On the other hand, Lester Del Rey sold his first story on his first attempt. So it's an average. It averages out.
Were these all different books, or was it the same thing going to different places?
I do not know the specific details of Ray Bradbury's long, torturous career of rejection. Keep in mind that happened before I was born.
And John and I, when we were trying to sell novels, we never did get a novel over the transom. John came to the attention of an editor for his short story. They liked a short story that appeared in Asimov magazine called
Farthest Man from Earth.
No, Guest Law. And
you're right.
that it went from there. But when I was a kid, when I got out of college, I read a book that said you can't get into publishing unless you know somebody, and I didn't know anybody. So I went to a convention and went and deliberately introduced myself to the editors, and that editor's still editing me.
Slowly. He's editing her slowly.
He does a good job. I'm not gonna
slowly. He does a slow, good job.
Yeah.
So I'm going to annoy you by saying that Beyond the Mist was the first person I submitted to was Jason. So.
No,
that puts you in the same category as Lester Del Rey. You guys are too young to know who that is.
It
He's
helps
the
the
editor. He's
average.
the editor of Del Rey. He's the editor of Del Rey books. Yeah. Okay.
You know what?
The averages for the rest
I should note, in terms of buying Ben's story, I wanted to buy that at the end of the third paragraph. Well, assuming it was still good by the end, but it was just like, I read the first bit and I went, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly
That's
what I'm
so
looking
cool.
for.
That's wonderful.
It was just, it just fit the whole idea so well. So
You also don't have to waste as much time with the electronic. I had one particular editor that rejected something of mine in 4 hours. Now, and this was a 6,000-word piece. So I know he didn't read it. Why would I send him something again?
Yeah.
Makes
You know,
sense.
so I don't have to waste my time. It would have took me 3 weeks if we were still sending letters.
Yeah, and cost you in terms of postage. I don't even want to tell you what my postage costs were back in the day.
Oh, it was
especially
such
for
a
a
joy
novel,
when
yeah.
we switched
Oh,
from postage
wait,
to
Just
electronic.
now, I just submitted my recent manuscript to Tor Books, my latest and greatest for Tor, and all I did was I sent a link to my, online cloud storage marker and put him in as a co-viewer, and I said, here Marco, here's my manuscript. I didn't even have to. It cost me nothing instead of costing me $5 or $10.
Yeah.
And in those days, $10 was worth.
And the printing of a
$20.
manuscript is a big deal. It's nowadays most of the publishers who want them printed have a high-speed printer, and you just send them a file and they print it out.
Perhaps they should raise royalties slightly.
Well, that's the other advantage of India. I get like half the cut from I forget what it is. What is it, Jaji? What do I get from Castalia? Yeah.
It's something
Whereas
like
from Torba, I get like 10% or 6 or something.
6%.
I know my Castalia House contract is 50%. So
Yeah.
Okay. Did I mention my weak with math is why? You think no hard science fiction guy could be weak with math, but I have a scientist friend in California who helps me with calculating things.
Well, I'm the one who, when we started, thought that noon Pacific time was in half an hour. So,
I only have a good handle on it from World of Warcraft, so
that's okay. I just got done reading. The first 2 chapters of Tarzan and Pellucidar by Edgar Rice Burroughs. So, in the interior world we live in that curves inward, it's always noon, so we don't have to worry about time zones.
I wouldn't worry about being bad with maths. I had a computer science lecturer back at uni with a degree in pure maths who regularly made simple errors when doing stuff. So don't worry about you guys. When the guys with the PhDs in pure maths get it wrong, you've got nothing to worry about. Can we come back to Lee's question though? If anyone else had any other comments on that, the loss of the Hugos will curtail the ability of the gatekeepers to socially engineer and push agendas.
Well, I think that's
what do others think of that?
I think the idea of potentially acting as a gatekeeper for the moment is thoroughly disrupted by the development of independent publishing, self-publishing, Amazon. That the awards aren't really a gatekeeper phenomenon, I think, even now. I don't think that any of this is really a gatekeeper. The question is how much direction can an award ceremony or blogs or reviewers can still swing a substantial amount of influence toward or away from a piece. But
even though I already answered the question, I'd like to chime in on David's coattails and say, even now, I've had complaints from writers saying that they thought the Hugo Award was a disadvantage, what we D&D players call a disad, rather than a plus for their sales, because it's a warning that you're going to be reading boring message fiction, lecturing you about social justice issues, rather than reading some mind-blowing, time travel story or space adventure story.
I don't think it's quite gotten that far.
Well, no, I've seen that several times now, which is really sad.
It's going in that
Several
direction.
people say that they now stay away from the Hugo.
I myself, I agree with EJ. I don't think it's gotten that far, but I know some guys who do think that. I don't agree with them.
Having seen it from more than one person, that's exactly what we're trying to reclaim by making there be a wider appeal for the Hugo.
Yeah,
exactly. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. If it had gotten that far, it wouldn't be worth saving. Anyway.
Wouldn't be worth doing. Yeah, I would just let the puppies be sad. It wouldn't be worth the effort. It wouldn't be worth the grief.
Puppies.
I don't care about the puppies.
Oh,
He doesn't. He doesn't. But you should. St. Francis.
We found an honest man.
Thank you. The teddy bears on my planet Vulcan are actually these giant things with fangs that are, the size of small horses. So
Yeah, that's what they have in Australia, right?
That's true.
And they
Folks in Australia had crocodiles for
They have
pets.
pouches, I believe, also.
That's why
have you
Jake-
heard of the drop bears we have down here?
Heard of the what? What?
Drop
Drop
bears.
bears.
Drop bears?
They live in the trees. They look like you might have heard of them as they're related to the koala, and they drop out of the trees and attack you. They're quite vicious.
Everything
and
in
I can
Australia attacks you.
I know this is
so
true because the Australian.
I'm so glad I
How's
live
it
in North
hanging?
America where all the fauna were wiped out by the Red Indians. And so everything here is like nice and peaceful. Except maybe a bear or a polecat, but not something like poisonous centipedes for which there's no possible antidote for their poison. Yeah, you have to go South America.
Thank you for the link.
There you go. Sorry, there's a link from the Australian Museum for proof that the drop bear is real.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's got to be real.
Oh,
I read somewhere that everything you read is true. I think it was in Lewis Carroll, but no one was.
Repository of all things true and false.
But David answered the question. But was anyone else wanted to answer the question?
Yeah,
about
would anyone else like to chime in?
social
Sorry.
justice, gatekeeper, or even the hard science fiction questions?
I second David. Yeah.
The motion's been moved and seconded.
Hey, Jason, how long did you think to go?
I'm happy to wind up when people would like to wind up. I'm thinking I should go to bed in about half an hour if possible.
Okay, it's just that.
all right.
Well, I'd be happy to go
If
on
people-
indefinitely. I also have to cook for tonight for Easter dinner.
Yes, I'd be happy to go on indefinitely too, but I need to get up and do things tomorrow. Oh,
Well,
we
I'll
have one
point
more
out-
question from Lee. Hang on, we have a couple questions.
But before you get to the questions, there's no reason we
that's
can't do
fine.
this again, and we could do it Saturday afternoon when it was actually like 6 in the morning for you rather than 1 in the morning or something. So
That'd
we
be
should
fine.
plan to do this again sometime.
Oh no, I would be keen to do these regularly for some definition of regularly. If people are keen to do it, I'd like to do it regularly. We could do it, I don't know, once a month or something. But
That sounds
yeah,
like fun.
I'd certainly be up for that.
I'm
But
down.
sorry, quick, couple of questions we have. Do you think, from T.C. McCarthy, do you think the Breitbart piece on the SJW's control of the Hugos helped or hurt the sad puppies?
Helped.
I think it helped. I think
Yeah, I agree.
at the point where any amount of publicity helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Breitbart was in the same position with the news that gamer gators were in with the gamer industry, and that the sad puppies are with the Hugos. It's the same
Yeah, I thought
phenomenon
so.
over and over again. The social justice warriors are trying to take control of all media in order to push across their message and their vision of the universe, because, like Christianity, their religion is also a proselytizing religion, and it's a death cult religion. And they just corrupt everything they touch. And then so the news is no longer trustworthy. I no longer believe anything I hear on the news, and I'm a guy who used to work for a newspaper. Okay? The Hugos, I think, are on their way to being no longer a trustworthy measure of who's a good science fiction writer. John Scalzi, who is a midlist talent, he's not untalented, but he's not that talented, is on the Hugos as a nomination every year. That's just absurd. I mean, nothing against him, but he's not the best writer out there. That he should be nominated every year? That's because he's in the inner circle. It's because he's in the in group. Charlie Strauss is also in the in group and is also nominated every year, but he at least has a claim to fame. He's a pretty darn good writer.
Okay.
So Breitbart
also-
was the same thing with the news.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Breitbart has picked up on with Gamergate and this as well. It's interesting that, well, Breitbart isn't Fox News, but they're not little either. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to find out pretty soon exactly what effect Breitbart's story had on Sad Puppies when they announced the nominees.
yes, suppose we should have timed this better and done it after the announcement. But anyway, and we have one more question.
Because then we could mention someone who may or may not have gotten a nomination.
Yes.
Someone who might be hosting.
Yes. And one more question from Lee. Do you think there will be a need for a Sad Puppies 4 next year? Because I know Kate the Impaler is...
Kate the Impaler has already taken him to the banner. Yes, we are already... We of the Evil League of Evil Authors have already determined in our... have met in our secret buried base in a volcano in the South Pacific and determined to start a slate for Sad Puppies 4. So... whether it's needed or not, we're going to do it again.
And the point of the Sad Puppy Slate is to bring to people's attention works that this group of people think are good works.
And how can that be a bad thing?
Absolutely.
Because we're the wrong kind of people. We're
Well,
not lockstep with the social justice warriors.
Even most of the people who seem to object to it seem to think that the best as I can tell, looking not at the top organizers, but just at the run-of-the-mill fans, the objection is if you're going to make suggestions, you shouldn't try to fill all the slots. You know, they feel you should make suggestions for 3 or 4 slots rather than 5 slots because they feel like they don't want any one group to just sweep over. You know, I'm not saying one thing way or the other whether I agree with them. I'm just saying that seems to be the main negative against it. So something to keep in mind.
I'm going to suggest 12 works in each slot next year.
I guess we'll see what happens with Sad Puppies 4 when it comes around. I've chatted with Kate a bit about just various things in the past. I might see if I can get her to use that picture of one of my dogs I've got looking sad. It's such a good picture. She just looks, and she's got this. She just pulls a face when.
Well, there are things other than undeserving science fiction writers getting nominations that make puppies sad. I'm just not aware of what they are. So make sure that they're sad for that reason. Otherwise, it would be disingenuous.
Well, and people forget that Puppies isn't a monolith. I mean, the first 2 years was about Larry proving the hypocrisy of the Chorf clique and proving that they would freak out if he got unapproved authors nominated.
If you use Torgenson's Chorf, I think you have to tell people what the initials stand for because I don't remember.
Someone said it earlier.
Cliquish, holier
than thou.
Reactionary fanatics.
There we go.
There you go.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that was sorry. I remember what I was going to say. One thing I did like, I think it was Larry's observation. Excuse me for 1 second. What? Oh, I'm not sure. You will need to excuse me for a second. I have dogs chewing something up. I will be right back. Right. But please keep talking and
similar
I'll be right back.
Children-related activities going on.
It's never a human problem. It has to be a canine problem.
No,
in our case, it was one boy
problem.
sitting on another boy created a loud yelp that you heard in the background earlier.
Let's see, it sounded a little canine then. The yelp part.
We're trying to raise our children as feral children. It's difficult.
Nobody approves of anything new.
Orville is upset by that, John.
John, I want him to be like Mowgli. We're going to have a bear and a panther here to raise him shortly.
I got a couple of feral cats you can have if you want them.
No, I already have some feral cats. We picked up some cats as a. It was divinely ordained by heaven that these cats would come into our house to save them, but they shed fleas on my bed and do
not insult my cats. They are wonderful cats.
They're wonderful cats shed fleas on my bed and they deliciously and delightfully snot on me. So we have as much cats as we need. Our cat love is full. Thank you very much for the offer.
So is mine, but apparently not.
Look, I'm not a cat person. Cats don't care about Nebula Awards or Hugo Awards. Okay, only puppies do. Cats have never shown any sorrow at the red shirts.
That's because everyone knows, John, that cats are fantasy fans.
That's
How
true.
often do cats appear in a science fiction story versus a fantasy story?
I write fantasy.
The cat who walked through walls.
Hey, I write about
no, there was a cat, wasn't there?
There's the cat from outer space as well.
But in general, there's a lot more cats in fantasy. I mean,
Time Cat by Lloyd Alexander. Is that a fantasy or is that science fiction?
No, it's time travel.
Well, but was it Was it time
I
travel
think it's
like?
a fantasy.
Was it time travel like a Christmas Carol, or was it time travel like a time machine?
I think
That's my yardstick for fantasy and science fiction. When people want my definition, I say a Christmas Carol is fantasy, and because it doesn't use a machine, and Wells' time machine is a science fiction. Like in the same way, H.G. Wells' Invisible Man is different from Frodo because he has to take off his clothes to turn invisible, and Frodo doesn't. That's the difference between science fiction and fantasy. Science fiction
That's why I
guys take
like
the clothes
fantasy. You know, I'm not that. You know, I want to be able to turn invisible and keep on my shirt.
off. That's why. And comic books are the best of both worlds because the Invisible Girl has a costume made of unstable molecules that goes with her when she turns invisible.
It's one of those details that you don't know unless you're a comic.
Nerd.
I beg your pardon. The word is uber
My
nerd.
son in the background said, "Yes, thank you."
Sorry, two things. Oh, one. Yes. Sorry about running off. One of our cats, who's a master of opening things, had found the treat bag and was batting it around trying to get it open.
That's hilarious.
He's spoiled. You'll be happy to know.
You missed
what
our
I was
discussion about dogs being science fiction creatures and cats being fantasy creatures.
Oh, there we
So you
go.
didn't-
What I
you
was going to
didn't
say
miss
was,
anything.
one of the, sorry, one of the things I was going to say, I think it was Larry's observation about the Hugo Awards. I'd agree with him that I'm very impressed that the Hugo guys, the guys that are running the awards, are just counting the votes. Like with the sad puppies coming along and suggesting a slate and some of the things getting nominated. Clearly, these guys are just counting the votes and doing it in a sort of open, transparent, I guess. I don't know what the right word would be there, but they're being honest and they're just playing by the rules. And
Sad Puppies one, which we almost forget about, was just Larry Correa trying to check the auditing on the vote counts.
Yeah, exactly.
He compared what he knew of the votes versus what the public result was, and it matched up well enough that he publicly said, "There's no feasible argument that this is crooked at the vote counting stage."
A friend of mine who had been involved with fandom for years said to me recently, I don't know how they could even make a claim that it was dishonest, because it's not only are they scrupulously honest about how they count to an almost unbearable degree, but it's done by a different group of people every year. It's whoever wins the bid. And, you know, I mean, Larry just kind of showed that was right, but, you know, when you look at how Worldcon's done, it's not like there's one group of people who runs it every year. Every year it's a completely different group of folks in a different city. So it'd be really hard to have some kind of collusion about it.
Or even country.
But the collusion's not on that level. Larry Correa, I think, successfully cleared them from any questions. The collusion was on that level. But there is collusion on some other level because you keep seeing the same names over and over again for the nominations, and other names that don't appear at all. There was
the
one guy.
strange thing is when names that are people who are very popular, who writing good stuff who are very popular, aren't showing up at all. There's nothing wrong with people who are fans voting for the same people they like, but when you see the people who are getting good book sales not showing up at all, and the books are good, they're not just popcorn books, that's when it's a bit odd.
And that's the kind of thing that sparked the initial suspicion.
Yes. Oh, we have another question. Are there ways for the internet to be embraced by science fiction communities to promote real worldwide diversity as opposed to the top-down conception of diversity favored by a clique? Will conventions tend to become homes for cliques because they are meetups for similar people from similar backgrounds, whilst the internet becomes a home for a different, more international and diverse worldwide community? I'm assuming diverse in the good sense, not the bad sense.
Yeah, I think we see that to a degree, though I will point out we have here, you know, a diversity of countries talking at the moment, from America and Australia and other such places.
And
diversity of two countries. I believe also that some of the people here are Yankees from northern states.
Absolutely.
So.
I'm actually a Korean woman using a voice disguiser.
There's a diversity of how honest and serious we're being. Oh no, I take it back. We're all on board.
I think he's the person is absolutely right that one of the issues is the people who tend to make the trouble to go to the conventions. A lot of them are people who went to conventions before there was an internet, and a lot of the younger people get their community through the internet. So there is a kind of a natural selection of a cliquish quality that comes about, and obviously the conventions want to spread out and draw in younger and more diverse, in all meanings of the word diverse, audiences. But I do think that there's definitely, when we're online, we can be talking to people on our blogs and find out the guy is in Russia or something, or China, and there's no different from the blog commenting point of view as somebody who's next door.
There's a possible downside. One thing that I've seen happen as I journey through the wilderness of the internet from one zone to another is there seems to be a tendency of echo chambers sometimes to create, where you see exactly the sort of cliquishness where any differing view is excluded, and you end up with a group that has no idea how the rest of the world actually views anything. Very easily.
Yes.
Oh, sort of like, I don't know how he won the election, no one I know voted for him.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's an excellent video which I will try to post on SuperversiveSF next week if I can figure out how to do that. Or I'll send the link to Jason and maybe he can do it.
That's fine, I can do it.
Which is a video about how anger spreads and how the internet uses anger, how angry memes spread quicker than non-angry ones, and how 90% of what goes on is people arguing inside the group about what they think people on the other side argued. And then the meme gets people in the other group arguing about what they think the people on that side argues, and the thing takes on a life of its own. And it's an extremely fascinating, very short video because you stop and you go, wait, have I been letting that happen to me? Yeah, I really think it's very eye-opening.
And that's one of the reasons, even as a pretty dedicated gamer, I've avoided weighing in on Gamergate because I look at the two sides of the argument, and they're arguing about two separate things. It's really weird. Like, if you read Kotaku, they're all like, oh my god, these people are horrible, they don't want gender equality, and then you read the conservative sources, and they're like, we just want, unbiased gaming reporting, and so I don't have time to mess with it. I just want my video game.
That's true on almost every issue you can mention.
But don't be fooled. What's going on there is one side has a legitimate objection, the other side's making a false accusation in the hopes that people like you will be turned off because they're not talking about the same thing. The accusation of that they're sexist, racist pigs is an accusation meant only to stir up.
I'm sorry, but he is completely wrong. The two sides.
Wrong.
I have a lot of people I know who their only knowledge of Gamergate was through rather nasty pro-Gamergate, anti-girl tweets that were published. All they saw was someone else publishing those tweets. That's all they knew about it. And so they are 100% completely sincere in their belief that this was a really...
I said nothing about the sincerity.
Right,
I said
but what I'm saying
false
is...
accusation was leveled and then trumpeted. And people, and what you're saying is some people saw evidence that the false accusation was true.
Right,
and that's
but what
all
I'm
they know
saying
about it.
is that
That doesn't
the
make the accusation true.
Right, but the people who think it's true have no idea it's false. And it wasn't even false. It was true. It just was not the main issue. That's what I see, and not in this, just in this, but in all of the big political issues at the moment. Each side is arguing very angrily about something that is the outside of the issue. The fact that Alex Baldwin said something really rude against a girl is not what Gamergate's about. But if that's all you've seen, that's not untrue that it happened.
Well,
it's just not what Gamergate is actually about.
Because the opposition controls the narrative. I mean, there's empirical evidence that 90 to 95% of Gamergate tweets are positive. Like
exactly.
Statistician looked into it. Yeah, the FBI looked into potential threats. They haven't found anything. There have been 0 charges filed and arrests made against Gamergate.
But if all you've seen about it is 1 or 2 posts at the very beginning that said, "Oh, how terrible these guys are! Look at this quote," then you're completely upset about it, and you think legitimately, and you have no idea. You're just missing the point.
But the thing is that if that's all you've seen, I would say that betrays sort of a, I don't want to insult anyone, but lack of doing due diligence. Because
I will. Shallow. I will insult the people. You are shallow if you haven't looked into the issue. And if you haven't looked into the issue, then say, I have no opinion on the issue because I haven't looked into it. That's what I
I
said
disagree.
about
I don't think we have the capacity right now in our lives to look into things beyond a little bit. If you look into it,
Then
you
have
find
no
out
opinion. If you
if
have
somebody
no
says
information.
these guys are really horrible, look at what they said, and you look at the quote, and the quote is terrible, and you look it up, and the guy actually said it. You don't even know that there's another side beyond that to go look up. You see, and you know what I mean? It's not. I mean, you now think you have a completely legitimate opinion that you think you have for a good reason, and
Look at the
I'm
I
sure
don't
there's
see how you
people
can know
who
otherwise.
legitimately believed everything that came out of the Soviet Union too, and believe that Big Brother actually is increasing the chocolate grams from 5 grams to 4 grams as an increase. But their opinion is shallow based on one source. They're shallow and ignorant. Then that's fine.
I'd like to make one real quick observation here. The question didn't really have anything to do with Gamergate, and just to perhaps answer the question, because Gamergate is very different in that it is entirely, obviously, about the internet. I think the internet, in reference to what was asked about this, is definitely precludes a lot of the problems with diversity because it is bringing people together with a separate interest, and it's beneficial.
What do you mean by with a separate interest? What does that mean?
But the separate interest of science fiction. The question was basically is science fiction, is the internet a problem because of diversity? I'd have to read the question back again. I had it in my head. I only kept the answer in my head through all the talk about Gamergate because I'm one of those people who's completely ignorant, so I try not to comment on it.
looking into something that is really.
See, no, I admire that. That's just what I was saying. If you don't know that, yeah.
Yeah, all I can do is look and say, yeah, that's interesting, but I don't know anything about it.
Right.
So I can't say. But I do think that the internet involvement in the science fiction community cannot be it had no real effect because the science fiction, the world cons, etc., the old and new people that they're talking about, the old guard of world cons that only went to world cons, and perhaps new people on the internet who are now exposed to world con and these kind of things. The focus is, I think, more on science fiction. So I think you're forced into the diversity, and I don't think that the internet being involved could be harmful to that at all.
I also think that science fiction, we really aren't in a ghetto anymore, and so there's when I read conservative pundits talking about the great issues of the day, like elections and what have you, making references to Mordor or to then science fiction has really made it into the mainstream.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so for one group of science fiction guys to look down on, comic book readers or Star Trek or Star Wars books or any of that sort of thing.
Geek hierarchy.
Yeah, the geek hierarchy I regard as mildly ridiculous. I mean, I'm writing people who like stories about Martians don't like stories about Kryptonians. I mean, that's right. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. Personally, I don't even know what Mordor is, but I certainly have no problem with it. I mean, I know it's fantasy, and I know it has to do with Lord of the Rings.
It's from Lord of the Rings. It's the.
Yeah, I know it's from Lord of the Rings, but that's all I know. But I mean, that's great. But I'm thrilled that it's becoming more popular and more mainstream.
More mainstream, yeah.
Absolutely.
There was the question before about whether Sad Puppies 4 is necessary. I think it sort of works as what's almost become a parallel structure of an award in itself before it actually gets to the Hugos. So in that way, I think it does serve a very useful purpose to continue.
That's true. Because there was basically a nominating for Sad Puppies. Brad picked it from stories that people nominated as stories they really liked. It wasn't like he just picked stories that, out of the top of his hat or something.
Or for personal reasons.
Right, exactly. He didn't. He was very careful about it.
Okay. One final one final thing. I think then we should look at wrapping this up before I doze off. Do you think it would be worth trying to set up? One of the comments from Patricia Hayden. She said, in a rather unguarded moment, if you guys want to do your own award, go and set up your own award. Don't pollute ours. What do you think of that idea?
I cannot, since I'm a gentleman, I can't speak ill of a lady, but I will say that it is absurd to point at someone like me who's been in this field, who's been reading in this field ever since I could read, and has been published in this field for years, to point at Jim Butcher and to say, you guys are not members of our award. You guys are not science fiction fans. You guys don't get a vote in what we science fiction fans want to give an award to. That's just mind-bogglingly arrogant on the lady's part to say that. And I'm a tour author. I'm an author that works for her husband's company.
I think there's several issues.
And moreover, I read Dune, which was an award winner, and Call Me Conrad, and all the other award winners. I've been to Worldcon. If the Hugos are not the premier science fiction award voted on by the science fiction fans for the science fiction they like, then don't call it the Hugo anymore. She should change her award to the Social Justice Award if they want to give an award for political reasons to their political friends and their small little circle of circle jerks.
Hear, hear.
I think something slightly different. One, I think we need to reclaim the Hugo and make it a more popular related award.
Absolutely.
Two, it would be worth thinking about. One of the problems is that Worldcon is not a really big convention compared to, say, DragonCon. So one of the things would be, well, what about another award? But the problem with that, the reason we liked Worldcon and World Fantasy is that they were straight science fiction, straight fantasy. If you go to Comic-Con or you go to DragonCon, you're going to get a tie-in book that might come up at the top rather than, say, a really good science fiction book, because those are media-related conventions. So
if you look at the... If you look at
convention... Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but if you look at the... We talked about Oscars before, and you wrote that blog piece on that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'm talking to the right young lady. I want to make sure I wasn't being a fool. Exactly. Look at the number of awards that are given in the movie industry. Everybody has an award. Every little group has an award. There's nothing wrong with a group of people who has a strong interest in science fiction with making suggestions or giving out a set of awards that they feel are appropriate for the science fiction industry. And that doesn't belittle or make better or worse any other set of awards.
Right. I'll point out the Prometheus Award. The Prometheus Award is an award given to libertarian science fiction. If Mrs. Hayden wishes to give an award for left-leaning, anti-white, I
think John's dropped out.
Yeah, I think so too. But yeah, his point was being, of course, that if he wants to someone wants to give an award for non-cisgendered and other groups, then fine, and other people can do the same thing.
Exactly.
And she can give her award to whoever she wants, but she doesn't have to take over the Hugos or, God forbid, the Nebulas to do it.
Right, and there's been a lot of talk of a parallel award. It'll be interesting to see if anyone ever pulls the trigger on it.
But like I said, there are so many awards in Cannes and in the Canadian thing, and there's another one in Denver, and there's nothing wrong with a group. Look at what Jason has here, the most philosophical works here. The other gentleman was mentioning the fact that there was awards given for libertarian. There's nothing wrong with the most philosophical science fiction pieces of the year.
Right.
And nobody else is publishing a magazine to put those in except Jason right now.
Shh, don't give other people ideas.
Well,
all right, it looks like we've lost John, and we may have lost Jadji too by the sounds of things. Yep.
Just saw her drop off.
It could be battery problems. I got a battery warning and plugged in again. If they
Okay.
were on iPhones, they
Well-
were just about ready to run out.
Sounds
Now
like
that
we're coming to
people
an
are
end.
dropping out of the conversation, maybe we should look at wrapping this up.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone,
Ben?
for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for hosting.
It looks like
Oh,
John's
I'm happy
back,
to. I'd like,
picture
and
anyway.
we shall have to do this again in the near future. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Absolutely.
It's been, and we'll figure out how to get more interactive questions going next time. Oh, there we go. Judgy's back.
Welcome back.
Hey, sorry,
Yeah.
our modem turned off. Sorry.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
We're just wrapping up now. I was just saying thank you, everyone, for participating, and thank you for people for listening. And we'll have to do this again very soon.
Well, thank you guys. Hey,
Absolutely.
John, they're wrapping up. You want to come up here? You can say goodbye. Computer. He's having computer troubles too. Anyway, thank you, everybody. This was delightful, and it would be a lot of fun to do it again, and maybe even discuss some more particularly superversive things, or discuss
Yes,
what's
definitely.
going on with this a few months from now as we get closer to the actual Worldcon, and I'm sure there's many other topics out there that we could discuss, and maybe people can send in questions during the next month, and next time we get together, we'll have them ready.
That's
I'd
a good
love
idea.
to see him.
Well, there's one thing
Is
you
John
better
coming
know,
up?
that's not
Or
the-
I think so. Hey, John, they're waiting for you if you want to come up and say goodbye. He's on his way.
No worries. But yes, I've had fun. Thank you, everybody, and
Yeah,
thank you,
poor
everyone,
John.
for
I banished him downstairs.
the man cave.
Well,
Thank you,
gentlemen,
thank you,
hello.
thank you all
Hello
you
and
guys
goodbye.
for. Sorry, go on, John.
Just came up. I came up from the dungeon. I was checking on the mutants. So I came up to say hello and goodbye.
Bye. Happy Easter, everybody.
You're on that.
Happy Easter. He is risen.
Happy Easter.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Happy Easter, guys.
Yes, happy Easter.
Happy Easter, everyone. All right, and we'll do this again in the near future. All right, I'm going to